Now recognizes the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Fitzpatrick.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Chairman Bernanke. I have just two questions. One has to do with trade, and the second's a little closer to home. In connection with the trade gap with China, which has shown no signs of closing, and that despite the fact that their currency has appreciated somewhat, my question is, what share of the trade imbalance can be attributed to exchange rates as opposed to more structural and institutional issues like high corporate taxes, which I believe will soon have the highest corporate tax in the world, and other challenges that manufacturing has in this country?
Well, exchange rates are certainly playing a role. The other most direct factors have to do with the saving and investment patterns in the two countries. In China, savings rates are extraordinarily high, even though their investment is also high, and so they have a lot of extra savings to send abroad, and that corresponds to the current account surplus that they have. In the United States, our savings rate is much lower, both at the household level but also in the government level, and so we need to borrow abroad, and that corresponds to that as well. So I think those two factors, the saving investment patterns and exchange rates, are the most important. There are other issues related to the mix of goods that we produce, manufactured goods and specialized goods and China's need. A lot of what China imports is really components that they use to assemble and then export to other countries.
We still have a lot of manufacturing in Pennsylvania, so those issues are important. But a little closer to home, my district, Pennsylvania's 8th, is Bucks County, Northeast Philadelphia. Housing and financial services are key industries in the district. Both have been hit hard in this recession. My sense is that up until 2008, banks were making loans, persons of good credit and also persons of not so good credit, perhaps as a result of the several administrations' interest in housing policies. Question is, what can we do now, where we are now in this economy, to incentivize banks to start making loans again to persons of good quality credit?
Well, I was referring to some of our efforts earlier. We have to make sure, we have to strike an appropriate balance, which your question suggested. We don't want banks to make bad loans. We want to make loans to good borrowers and loans that will be paid back. I think banks are increasingly willing to do that. They're a little bit less shell-shocked than they were, and their capital has built up and their profits are building up. So I think from a government point of view, our job and the Federal Reserve's job is to make sure that examiners and regulators are playing a neutral referee role and not actively restraining lending. So as I mentioned, and I don't want to take all your time, but we've made a lot of effort to provide guidance to the banks and our examiners, to train our examiners, to talk to the banks, to talk to businesses. And I think we're making some progress, but I admit that there may be situations where good loans are still not being made. But I am hopeful that we'll see some improvement this year.
But it's your sense that regulators are becoming more neutral or more reasonable and less onerous than they have been in?
Of course, we're only one of several bank regulators. The Fed is only one. But, we are working hard and trying to train our examiners and push them in the direction of a fair, neutral position on lending.
Mr. Chairman, may I yield 30 seconds to the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Stivers?
We have a minute and 13 seconds you can yield to.